Nothing is worse than getting cold or wet while you're snowboarding. Today I'm going to be talking about exactly what clothing you need to enjoy your next snowboard trip. With this layering system, my main goals are waterproofness to prevent getting wet, having multiple layers to adjust how warm I am based on the temperature, a backup pair of essentials just in case something gets wet, and to maintain visibility so that if you're snowboarding with other people, they'll be able to easily find you. Let's start out with the base layers. You want this layer to either be synthetic or wool. I usually go with synthetic. It's cheaper and it's more comfortable. I have a couple options. My budget option is from Uniqlo. It's their Heat Tech Extra Warm Top. I find this is very comfortable and it keeps me pretty warm. If it's extra cold out, I have a base layer from Mech. This is a grid style base layer, and I find this keeps me a bit warmer than the Uniqlo, but it is probably double the price. So I think for most people, the Uniqlo shirt is going to be perfectly fine. With this base layer, you want it to be comfortable and tight towards your skin. I will usually bring multiple pairs of this base layer if I'm going on a weekend trip, for example, so that I can switch them out each day while not needing to switch out my mid layer. On top of the base layer is going to be my mid layer. I will usually adjust my mid layer depending on what temperature it is out. There's two options. You can either go with a fleece sweater or you can go with a synthetic insulated jacket. I'll start with a couple of fleece options. I like to have a more thin fleece as well as a thicker fleece, so I can switch those out or layer them both together depending on what temperature it is out. My go-to thin fleece right now is the Arcteryx Delta LT Full Zip. I really like this. It's super thin and keeps you warm, especially with a base layer underneath. If I'm looking for a thicker fleece, I'll either go with the Patagonia Better Sweater, or I'll go with one of the Burton Polar Fleece hoodies, depending what I want to go with and what other layers I'm wearing. If you're looking for a more budget option, Uniqlo also has a grid fleece sweater that's going to be about half the price of either of those. If it is very cold out, I have a synthetic jacket. This is the Arcteryx Atom LT hoodie. The keys to any synthetic jacket that you're going to want to wear is going to have to be light and breathable. The Arcteryx Atom LT does have venting layers on the sides underneath the armpits, which help prevent you from sweating. Mine does have a hood, but you probably don't need one depending on what you're wearing underneath your helmet. Usually what I'll do is I'll bring both my fleeces as well as my insulated jacket on a snowboard trip, and depending how the weather is, I may switch them out throughout the day or leave one in my backpack just in case I get cold on the chairlift. On top of your base layer and your mid layer, you're going to want a hard shell jacket. This layer is extremely important because it's going to be what keeps you dry and keeps all your layers underneath dry. Your jacket can be Gore-Tex, but that's going to cost a bit more, and it may not be necessary for most people. Right now, what I've been using is the Arcteryx Beta AR. It is not a dedicated snowboard shell. However, I use it for many other purposes, and it does exactly what I need for snowboarding. Ideally, with your hard shell, you're going to want a snow skirt on the bottom. The Beta AR does not have one, so I have opted for using a bib underneath. Ideally, you don't use a black jacket as it's going to be hard for people to find you, but I have a colorful helmet that I usually wear, so people are still easily able to find me, even though I'm wearing black snow pants and a jacket. The Beta AR is okay for snowboarding. However, I wouldn't really recommend it to you guys as it's more of an all-around jacket, and it's probably not going to meet your needs for snowboarding as much as some of the other options out there. And it's also fairly expensive. Now for the bottoms. Same with the top. For the base layer, you either want it to be a synthetic or a wool material. For whatever reason, I find that wool materials are more comfortable on my bottom versus on the top. So I do opt for wool bottoms occasionally, depending how cold it is. If it's not super cold out, and as well as a good budget option, I just got these Heat FX long johns from Walmart, and they do the job plenty well. And if it's very cold, I also have these Smart Wool 250 base layer bottoms that are much warmer and extremely comfortable. Since I don't wear any insulated snow pants, I sometimes opt to wear an additional bottom layer underneath my shell. Usually what I'll do is just wear any regular cotton sweatpants that I find comfortable. As long as they're easy for me to move in and not too heavy, they're fine. So all you need to do is just grab any sweatpants that you have and put those on top of your base layer. If you want to go for the more expensive route, you could opt for some fleece sweatpants. However, I've found that cotton sweatpants have done the job just fine. On top of those two layers, I will wear a shell snow pant. Currently, I am wearing the Arcteryx Stingray Snow Bib. As I talked about before, I opt for the bib pants as my jacket does not have a snow skirt. I do enjoy the snow bib better actually than regular snow pants as it keeps my core warmer And it also prevents snow from coming up much better than a snow skirt can. Again, you don't really need to buy super expensive snow pants. You can opt for your regular cheap snow pants you can get from Columbia or North Face or something. You don't need to go out and buy expensive Gore-Tex shell pants. However, I did buy these snow pants last year, and I actually really enjoy them. So they were worth the price for me, but for you guys, depending if you're on a budget, just offer something cheaper and it's gonna do the job just as well. Now let's talk about the accessories. Starting off with socks, I always opt for merino wool socks. Generally, I use hiking socks because they're multi-purpose, and I find snowboard socks to just not be as warm. I have two different options. The first is a very thin pair of sock liners. These are merino wool icebreaker socks. I find they're a good thin material. If it's super hot out and your feet tend to sweat a lot, these will be really good. And they also work really well as a second layer underneath your thicker socks if it's one of those colder days. And my main sock that I use is just a regular merino wool hiking sock, one of the thicker cushion materials. Either can be from Smart Wool or any other brand. I just find that these hiking socks are much better at maintaining moisture in my boot compared to regular snowboard socks. If you tend to get cold feet, I would also recommend picking up some toe warmers and put those in your boots, or just keep them in your jacket if you end up getting colder throughout the day. Now in terms of gloves, I have always struggled with having cold fingers, so I've really tried to optimize this area of my packing list. I will always have some sort of glove liner. These are some Outdoor Research thin gloves. These are great because if you need to take off your thicker pair of mitts or gloves, your fingers won't get as cold. For example, if you need to use your phone or if you need to do up your bindings. However, I do find that any glove that says they're touchscreen compatible is not touchscreen compatible. I have tried many different gloves, and for whatever reason, they never work on my cell phone. And on top of that, I opt for mitts. Mitts are much more warmer than gloves, and they're very easy to put hand warmers inside. These are a pair of Gordini Gore-Tex mitts. I love these because they're super warm and waterproof. I also really like that they have a wrist strap on them. So if I need to take off my mitts on the chairlift, for example, they will not fall off and then I have to go find them later on. If your hands do tend to get extra cold, I would also recommend bringing some extra pair of hand warmers. I usually keep a couple pairs in my backpack or pocket and switch those out. Additionally, when I go on any snowboard trip, I always bring an extra pair of socks and glove liners. That way, if either of these get wet throughout the day, I can easily change them and not be uncomfortable. And lastly, for the neck and head, I always start off with a balaclava. I have two different options. I have a thinner merino wool one that I got off Amazon that has a really nice air hole in it so that you can breathe through it and you're less likely to get the mouth area wet. Additionally, I have another thicker fleece balaclava I got from Costco. This is the Boule brand and it cost me maybe $20. I can either wear that over top of my thinner balaclava or I can just wear it by itself. Lastly, I will also bring a merino wool, very thin summer style buff. This is great for keeping under these layers and preventing your thick balaclavas from getting wet and uncomfortable and then freezing while you're sitting on the chairlift. Just like my gloves and socks, I will usually bring an extra balaclava as this is the most likely item that's going to get wet. And that is all the clothing you're going to need to go out snowboarding. I will put some links in the description for certain products if I can find them, and let me know if there's any other products that you like to wear while snowboarding. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed, please like and subscribe. Thank you.